So a lot of you may know I spent quite a bit of time in Rochester, Minnesota at the Mayo Clinic, and one of the things I like about Minnesota is it's very similar to Mission Springs in that there's a lot of Swedes that have immigrated over to that area. And following one of my surgeries, I was in physical therapy being brought back to strength. You know, after surgery, they don't let you rest. They pull you up and make you walk in the halls. And so I'm going through my stretches with my bands. I'm listening to a gentleman next to me speak to his physical therapist, and he's relating a story, and he's talking about a litigation that he's part of. And he starts by talking about what the opposing lawyer was saying to him, and the opposing lawyer is saying something to the effect of, just admit it. When the policeman arrived on the scene, you said you felt fine. And the man continued on and said, well, now, what you need to see is I was loading Bessie, my cow, onto the trailer, and I got her in. The lawyer again interrupted and said, just answer my question. Did you or did you not, when the policeman arrived on the scene, say, I'm fine? And he said, well, now I'm getting to that. So I got into the truck, and I started driving down the road, and again, the lawyer interrupted him and said, Your Honor, please. I'm simply trying to establish the fact that 2 months ago, when this man was asked at the scene of the accident how he felt following the accident, he said, I'm fine. Now he's obviously trying to exploit this measure so that he can make money. And the judge thought about it and said, you know, hold on, I want to hear a little bit about this Bessie the cow, and let's see where this story's going. So the man said, thank you very much, Judge. He said, so I'm driving down the road, and I come through the cross intersection, and yumping Jehoshaphat out of nowhere, an Everclear truck comes right through and smashes into the side of my truck. Well, Bessie gets tossed from the trailer into one side of the ditch, and I'm tossed from my truck to the other side of the ditch, and I can tell that Bessie's really hurt over there because she's moaning and she's groaning, and I know she must have the broken bones, and I'm laying there and I'm feeling about the same. Finally, the motorcycle arrives with the policeman. Well, the policeman gets out, and first he walks to the other side of the road. He looks down at Bessie, and Bessie's not doing well, and he says, how you feeling there, girl? And she's just moaning and groaning. So he takes out his sidearm, and he puts her out of her misery. Then he walks across the street to me. And he asked me, how you feeling? So I asked you, Judge, what would you say? Last year when I spoke, I opened with a story that had occurred when I was in Detroit receiving a treatment, and that story was factual. The last story you just heard, I made up. And the reason I tell that story is when you have cancer, you have to have just a wild imagination, because to go through some of what we go through is absolutely insane. And I fully maintain the only way to meet that task is to have a wild imagination. And I'll take off into fantasy lands in my mind again and again when I'm going through therapy. And one of my favorite fantasies that I take off into is winning the lottery. And now I'm not talking about, 7 or 8 million, because by the time the government's done putting their hands in it and the state takes their cut, and then you have attorney fees, and you have, an accountant who's going to help you out, all said and done, you get 7 or 8 million, you have time to pay off your house, pay off the cars, pay off the credit cards, and maybe take your family out to Outback for dinner. So that's about it. I'm talking about winning the real lottery, 380 million. So much obscene money that even after everybody's had their hand in the pot, you've got so much left, you realize you've got all the money you'll need for the rest of your life. It's as simple as that. Now, I could see that when you have that much money at your disposal, it'd bring some new pressures, things that you hadn't considered. For example, a lot of people think that the really wealthy always have a yes man running around beside them. I would see, if it became public knowledge that you won that much money, you'd probably not want a yes man. You'd want somebody to do the opposite, to push people away that are constantly coming to you with their hand out asking for funding. So, I could see you'd probably go and get some big Italian guy in a funny-looking suit that was really intimidating with a villainous nickname like Frosty or something. And he wouldn't be the yes man. He'd be Frosty the no man. Yeah, that's right. I went there. But if you had that kind of money at your disposal, you'd want to really take care of your family, obviously. So you'd want to be real prudent with your investments, because you'd want to make sure that, first off, they knew that you loved them, and secondly, that you were caring for their future. The same would be true of your friends. You'd want to make sure that, again, what you did was shrewd, and you found ways to help them as well. Then, of course, you'd want to make investments in your faith, and you'd want to make investments in any altruistic goals that you had. And here's my shameful plug for the Me One Foundation. If anybody ever does win the lottery, make sure that you're donating. Now, I know some of you are sitting out there in the audience getting ready to go home and saying, Tom, you're describing a little bit about fantasies and winning the lottery, but there's a fine line between fantasy and obsession, and you're starting to flirt with it. So, where are you going here? The reason I bring this up is because what some of you may not know is I did win the biggest lottery in the history of mankind. In February of 2004, I had a phone call that I answered, and I heard it is cancer. Now, the reason I say that that's the biggest lottery ever won in mankind is not because I was giving a bevy of money. It's not like anybody showed up at my doorstep with gold or diamonds. I was paid in something that was even richer, something that money can't buy and gold and diamonds can't buy. I was given time. How much time? All the time that I'd need for the rest of my life. And just like that person that wins that giant lottery, I realized the importance that came with that and how I was going to have to make really shrewd investments of my time. And the first thing I was going to invest my time in was my family. And I was going to make sure that they knew how much I loved them. And I was going to make sure that my investment paid off. Because just like the person with the money, you want to see the interest in the dividends. And I do see it in my family. As you can tell by a couple of statements that I've made previously, I tell some pretty corny jokes. So when we're sitting around at the dinner table, and my son Timmy will tell just a ridiculously corny joke that nobody else at the table's laughing at other than the two of us, I do see that reflection. When I see my wife, who tells me she hates something like vanilla pudding, and then 2 weeks later, I've got more vanilla pudding in the house than I could ever imagine because she's eating it all, I know that there's a reflection of me in that person. The same can be true of my friends. I measure those investments of time that I put into my friends, and I see the reflection of Tom Wieser-isms, I guess I'll call them, in them. And I know that it's a worthwhile investment. The people on this board are a perfect example. They're not only friends, they help me with my altruistic goal, to give back to others that are in need. And I see a lot of myself in them, and that makes me so proud. Now, I took an eye at the clock before I started talking, and I've been up here for just shy of 10 minutes. So again, as a lottery winner, I have to explain, I've invested 10 minutes of my time in all of you. My goal is to make sure that this investment will resonate with each of you and stay with each of you, and a little bit of the way I view life will be reflected in your actions as you move forward. One person may be in the audience right now saying, yeah, but Tom, there's a difference. If you won that big lottery and you made those prudent investments, there'd still be a principal that would be sitting in the bank or sitting in treasury bonds or something that was with you until the day you left. And then that principal would be divided up amongst family and friends. And in your analogy, there isn't a principal. I beg to differ. I measure the interest, and I measure the dividends in your actions. The principle that I will leave will be what's left in the indelible measurement of who I was and what I represented on this planet, in your hearts and in your minds. if I've invested this past 10 minutes wisely, and if I have reached all of you, it gives me the greatest of pleasure to announce to all of you, congratulations, you just won the lottery.